Today we are going to cover the Season 1 of the Avatar The Last Airbender from start to finish in details. Long ago, the four nations lived together in harmony, and the peace was made possible by the Avatar, the one person with the ability to master all four elements. However, when an Avatar dies, their spirit is reborn into a new body in an eternal cycle. Ever since the death of the last Avatar, the new incarnation has yet to emerge. Fire Lord Sozin, the ruthless leader of the Fire Nation, decided to use this opportunity to launch an attack to conquer the world. But in order to begin his plan, he has to kill the next Avatar, the one person who stands in his way.
The series begins with a member of the Earth Kingdom being chased through the streets by firebenders. He manages to get news of the Fire Nation's plan to start a war to his companion, but tells him to flee for the Earth Kingdom, whilst he deals with his pursuers. The firebenders manage to capture him and bring him before the Fire Lord. The Fire Lord, however, reveals he wanted the Earth Kingdom to know so that they could gather troops for the war elsewhere, clearing the way for their real targets, the Air Nomads. The Avatar brings balance to the four nations, and the latest one, who is yet to emerge, is due to come from the Air Nomads. Fire Lord Sozin is aware of this cycle, and he plans to eradicate them all to ensure the Avatar cannot stand in their way. After the titles were transported to the Southern Air Temple, where the Nomads are preparing for the Comet Festival, the council gathers to discuss Sozin's plans, and Aang, a young airbending prodigy who is yet to learn that he is the latest reincarnation of the Avatar. Brother Gyatso argues that Aang still has much to learn, but the other Nomads say Aang must leave immediately to begin his training in the other arts so he can bring balance. Afterward, Gyatso finally reveals Aang's true nature to him, and the 12-year-old wrestles with his newfound burden as he prepares to leave on his sky bison, Appa. Suddenly, Fire Nation troops launch a brutal assault on the temple, leaving no survivors. Aang is unaware of the assault, but he and Appa are caught by a huge wave and fall below the tides. Next, we head to Wolf Cove, a village inhabited by the Southern Water Tribe. There, we meet the sibling duos Sokka and Katara, Aang's soon-to-be traveling companions. After their father departed for the war with the Fire Nation, teenage Sokka became the leader of the tribe, whilst Katara was practicing her waterbending in secret. Sokka and Katara head out on a boat trip, but their canoe gets swept along by some currents, and they uncover a huge iceberg. This structure bursts and fires a huge beam of energy into the sky, a signal that is witnessed by Prince Zuko, aboard a Fire Nation ship elsewhere in the region. He's been banished from the nation by his father, Fire Lord Ozai, until he finds the Avatar and is doggedly following any sign of the Avatar's whereabouts. As it turns out, this was caused by Aang, who was sealed away inside. He collapses, and Katara convinces her brother to help bring him back to their village to help the young boy. Zuko also sets sail for Wolf Cove, the only settlement in the region, assuming that's where he'll be taken. Once he reawakens in the village, Aang learns from Katara and Sokka's grandmother, that he's been sealed away for 100 years, and that he's officially the last Airbender. He also summons Appa back to his side, much to the amazement of the villagers. Zuko's Fire Nation troops are spotted near the village, and surmises Aang must be the Avatar, and that's why they're coming. Sokka begins to prepare to defend the village after accusing Aang of being a coward, as he hid away when the world needed the Avatar most. Katara takes him with some other members of the tribe to keep him safe. Zuko and his men arrive at the gates. He states he only wants the Avatar and will do them no harm so long as the tribe hands him over. Sokka wants to surrender Aang, but Katara convinces him not to, so he heads out onto the ice and faces Zuko himself. He challenges the prince to a one-on-one duel. Zuko has been honing his skills to face the Avatar, and Sokka proves no match for him. But just as he moves to kill Sokka, Aang intervenes and fends off the firebenders with the help of the villagers. Zuko orders the village be burned to the ground, but Aang surrenders so long as they leave the Water Tribe alone. Aang is taken aboard Zuko's ship. In a cell, he speaks to Iroh, asking why the Fire Nation started the war. Iroh says some members of their people see the nation as needing to expand and consume like fire, whilst others believe that they will be able to bring stability to the nations by ruling over them. Secretly, Aang uses his airbending powers to grab the keys to his cell from one of his keepers and escapes. He dives off deck and uses his staff, which expands and reveals some wings, to fly away from the ship, but Zuko shoots him down with a fireball as he starts tumbling to the ground below. Luckily, Katara and Sokka, who climbed on Appa and gone after Aang. Zuko tries to fire again, but Katara blocks his shot with some water bending. Aboard the creature, Katara and Sokka look to Aang for guidance as they can't bring him back to Wolf Cove without inviting more attacks from the Fire Nation. Aang takes them back to the temple, which they find in complete ruins. And when Aang lays eyes on Gyatso's body, he's overcome with emotion, and his powers cause a powerful whirlwind to whip up around him. It's a clear demonstration of how much power he possesses and how he can't really control it just yet, either. Seeing his home in pieces, Aang resolves to complete the mission he set out on 100 years ago, to complete his training and master the other bending arts, so the air nomad's deaths are not in vain and he can defeat the Fire Nation and bring balance between the four peoples once more. Katara finds a water-bending scroll in her bag, which her grandma had placed to help her bending education. Meanwhile, Iroh takes Prince Zuko to the headquarters of the regional Fire Nation, where they meet General Zhao to find unusual activities, which they plan to use to track the Avatar. Then again, Aang and his companions shows up on Kyushu Island where they get surrounded by a group of Kyushu warriors. The warriors received a sign that he is the Avatar and takes him to their leader. She is apprehensive that despite the fact that Aang is not a threat, the next visitors after him might be a danger to their village which has remained safe for past 100 years. Aang is frustrated about not finding any information about the Avatar state because if he doesn't know this, how can he conquer the Fire Nation? Karana finds out that Kyushu was an orphan who lived on the streets until she was hired as a housegirl for richest family on the island. She also finds out that all the previous avatars are reincarnations of his past lives. That means the other avatars are inside of him. If he wants to learn about his powers, he just have to figure out how to connect to them. However, Zuko noticed General had Zhao left the headquarters with some army. That means he is already after the Avatar. According to a merchant, Zhao is headed for the Kyushu Island, which means the Avatar might be there. Meanwhile, Suki teaches Sokka hand-to-hand combat, and in the process, they begin to develop feelings towards each other. Aang sits in front of Kyushu's statue and repeatedly asks for her help. He finds himself in the spirit world, and to his amazement, he sees Avatar Kyushu. During training, they all hear the town's alarm, which means danger has come to their village. Katara sees the Fire Nation ship on Kyushu Island, but she can't wake Aang up no matter how she tries. Kyushu teaches Aang to embrace his responsibility and shows him how the tribes to be annihilated if he doesn't defeat the Fire Lord. Karada goes to protect Aang's body from Zuko, but he overpowers her. Since he wants to know about the power of the Avatar, Kyushu decides to show him what the power can do. She takes over Aang's body and single-handedly defeats Zoku, Emperor of Zhao, and his entire army, forcing them to retreat back to their ship. When Aang regains consciousness, he blames himself for their village destruction, but the Kyushu leader replies that he has instead given them something far more valuable than anything, which is hope. They all bow down to Aang in respect, while Suki gives Sokka a goodbye kiss and also thanks him for bringing the world to her. The entire Kyushu villagers says goodbye to Aang and his friends as they leave their village. Aang tells his friends that he needs to go to the Northern Water Tribe because according to the vision Kyushu showed him, something terrible is going to happen there which only him can stop. General Zhao suggests to Zuko that they should work together in capturing the Avatar, but behind his back, he sends a message, using a bird to the Fire Lord, informing him that the Avatar is alive. In Episode 3 of Avatar, The Last Airbender, Omashu shows the end of a deception. Zuko's sister, Princess Azula, leads a group of ragtag rebels right to the foot of their enemy, Fire Lord Ozai. Ozai kills them easily. Katara struggles to master the forms on her waterbending scroll. Zuko struggles to agree on a plan to catch the Avatar. Aang and Ko sneak into the Earth Kingdom's city Omashu, following what looks like another airbender. Tio is not an airbender, as it turns out. He flies in an invention made by his father, Sai. They meet amidst a Fire Nation bombing. Aang decides to stay and help. We meet Azula's friends, Mai and Ty Lee. Azula wants the throne and fears Zuko will be next in line if he finds the Avatar. Katara learns that Sai is secretly speaking with the Fire Nation and runs into Jet, the boy that helped them sneak into Omasud. They track down Sai's contacts and fight them with the help of Jet's crew. Aang and Tio discover that someone else was behind the explosion. Katara and Jet bond over their struggles with loss because of the war. Jet tells her to remember the good things about her mother before she died when bending. This helps her finally create the water whip successfully. Sokka, Aang, and Katara can't agree whether Sai or Jet was behind the explosion. Zuko and Iroh arrive in Omashu, while Zhao starts to conspire with Azula. Jet claims responsibility for the bombings. He plans to blow up Sai as well as the king for conspiring with the Fire Nation. Zuki and Iroh engage on while Sokka and Katara go to save Sai and Tio. Zuko and Aang duel, but Zuko must refrain from using firebending to not expose himself to the Earth Nation. When Aang lets slip that he's read Zuko's journal, Zuko unleashes fire and is forced to flee. Sokka and Katara take the massive delivery slides to the top of Omashu. Katara is able to use the water whip technique to put out Longshot's fire arrow meant to ignite the bomb. Sai, Tio, and the Earth King are saved. Iroh openly firebends to draw the soldiers away from Zuko. Surprisingly, Aang is captured by Earth Nation soldiers. Episode 4 opens in the darkness of Omashu's dungeons. Aang and Iroh are in cells next to each other and speak of the war. Sai confesses to his son Tio and Sokka that he was indeed working with the Fire Nation. The Earth King summons Aang. Turns out King Bumi is Aang's childhood friend, making him about 110 years old. He jokes about it, but Bumi has gone a bit loopy. Katara speaks to Jet again about his plot to blow up Sai and King Bumi. She freezes him to a wooden stand and leaves him. Zuko steals an Earth soldier's uniform and sneaks into the dungeons to rescue Uncle Iroh. In order to save Aang, Sokka and Katara learn the story of two lovers who founded Omashu. A music man tells the story and points them on their way through the secret tunnel through the mountain. Zuko doubles back to catch up with Iroh on his way to the pit. Zuko finds a White Lotus tile Iroh bought and then drops to signal his location. Iroh was abused along the way because of his past role in the Battle of Bi Sing Se. He's accused of being heartless, but a flashback shows him mourning the death of his son. Sokka and Katara fight in the tunnels, but end up having a heart-to-heart. Bumi puts Aang through a series of nonsensical games and chides about missing 100 years of war. It culminates in a battle between the two to the death. Zuko catches up to Iroh, and the two of them defeat the Earth Kingdom. Iroh spares the soldier who tried to kill him. The soldier injures Iroh. The giant badger moles that taught Oma and Shu earthbending burst through the tunnels. They lead Katara and Sokka to the palace. King Bumi makes it clear that his games were an expression of his frustration or feeling abandoned by Aang. He wanted to teach Aang what it felt like to make impossible decisions. Bumi tries to force Aang to kill him or let himself die because friends are unreliable. Just then, Katara and Sokka arrive. With their help, Aang can save himself and spare King Bumi. Aang responds that it's only by relying on friends that he'll be able to save the world. Also, Aang still has the bison whistle Bumi made for him. This wins Bumi over. Sai informs King Bumi of the Fire Nation spies in Omashu. This allows the Earth Kingdom to prepare for an impending attack. Zuko and Iroh reflect on their connection and how they've been there for each other after Iroh's son's death. Also, Iroh was there for Zuko, and he was forced on this mission, and his face injury was fresh. Episode 5 of Avatar, The Last Airbender, Spirited Away, blasts open with a quick confrontation with Fire Nation soldiers. Katara is becoming a much stronger waterbender. Aang feels guilty about the firebenders' continued destruction of the world. A nearby village complains of the forest's sickness and people going missing. Aang says this is a spirit world problem and promises to help. Fire Lord Oze recognizes Azula's coy flattery as an attempt to assume the throne herself. The gang finds a shrine to the spirit of the forest. Aang meditates the three of them into the spirit world. Zuko discovers that everyone knows the Avatar has returned. Mercenary June and her giant hunting Shushu arrive. Iroh and Zuko hire June to find Aang. The owl spirit of knowledge warns Aang that Sokka and Katara should not be in the spirit world. Then the angry spirit of the forest attacks the gang. Katara relives the death of her mother. Sokka relives the day he became a Water Tribe warrior. He barely passed, and his father doubts his abilities as a leader. They are both confronted by a man with a horrifying mask. However, Aang's spiritual prowess allows him to resist being drawn back to his home. Then the creepy masked guy reveals himself as Ko, the Face Stealer, an awful, slithering monster. Aang runs away and then comes upon a hut. Gyatso is inside, waiting for him. Gyatso explains that Ko uses the fog of lost souls to trap people in their darkest memories. He's taken Sokka, Katara, and the villagers to his lair to consume them. Gyatso gives such powerful advice to Aang, it echoes and applies to Zuko and Azula as well. Aang exits the spirit world and heads off to rescue the souls of his friends. Episode 6 starts with Aang traveling to meet Avatar Roku C.S. Lee, hoping for his help and guidance to save his friends. Roku offers him a multi-phase totem to tame Ko's powers. While Commander Zhao takes charge of Zuko's mission, June captures Aang and him over to Zuko. Aang thinks Zuko has not always been as ruthless as he is now. Zuko recalls the painful memories of being disrespected at his father's council. Along the way, Zhao gets the wind of Aang's capture, so he gets hold of the Avatar and takes him toward the Fire Nation fortress. He starts to assert his dominance over the Fire Nation army. A masked man helps Aang to get rescued from the Fire Nation fortress. Eventually, Aang learns that Prince Zuko is behind the mask. Aang makes Zuko consider not being as ruthless as his predecessors and rather embrace his compassionate side. But that suggestion makes Aang angry. Soon after, Aang gets back on his journey to save his friends. Zuko recalls that he can set foot back in the Fire Nation only after he captures the Avatar. Iroh sways the minds of their army to trust and respect Zuko's leadership. Meanwhile, Aang rescues Sokka, Katara, and other locals who were captured by Ko. Episode 7 of Avatar: The Last Airbender episode opens with Zhao's men traveling towards Zuko's ship to make a case against him for treason, because he helped the Avatar flee from their fortress. So Zuko departs from his army to save himself. Meanwhile, Aang, Sokka, and Katara travel and reach the north. They introduce themselves to the Water Tribe leaders: Chief Arnuk, Nathaniel Arkin, his daughter, Princess Yu, Amber Midthunder, and Senior Water-Bending Master Paku and Martinez. Sokka can't shake the feeling that he has seen the princess somewhere before. She soon reveals that she is the talking fox he met in the woods. As a newborn, Princess Yu got very sick. That's when the moon spirit answered her father's prayer and imbued her with some of its presence. That is why she is part spirit and part human. Katara learns ways to improve her water-bending skills. But she soon realizes the reality in this world where women aren't allowed to fight. She speaks out against it, but Master Paku remains adamant on his age-old beliefs. So she gets into a fight against him and shows her impeccable skills. Although she stuns everyone, Paku does not allow her to fight in the battle. Aang gets in touch with Avatar Kuruk of the Northern Water Tribe. He cannot help as Aang expects him to. But he tells Aang that he needs to fight alone to protect others. Aang takes his words to heart. Meanwhile, Iroh tries to pit Zhao against Lord Ozai. On the other hand, Azula and Zuko are both determined to capture the Avatar. While in the last episode, Commander Zhao hopes to be a conqueror and that history will remember, he leads the Fire Nation into the north planning to weaken the Water Tribe. Aang, Sokka, and Katara get a hint of this plan and beat the Fire Benders on one of their ships. But they soon realize how big of a battle they still have to fight through. So Katara urges Master Paku to let the women fight. He allows them to repair some damage and help the warriors. Soon, they start considering her to be their master. Zhao seeks advice from the Great Sage for his mission. Kuruk warns Aang about the inevitable dangers, so Aang decides to get others ready for what awaits them. Zuko enters the Water Tribe Nation fortress to capture the Avatar. Katara puts up a fight against him to save Aang. While he undermines her abilities, she gives him a run for his money. Zhao decides to unleash a spirit to use for his militaristic ambitions, even if it comes at the cost of ending the peace of the world. As Iroh suspected, it brings chaos to the world and ability to bend the elements. Since the battle suddenly takes a dark turn, Aang enters a powerful state. He gives himself over to the ocean spirit and allows it to channel its rage through him. Zhao's selfish actions change the course of nature, which puts Yu's life at risk. Zuko fights Zhao and learns that his sister, Azula, caused all the harm in his life to stop him from getting hold of the Avatar. So Zuko stops Zhao from succeeding in his mission. Yu realizes that she needs to take action to save the world, since hers is a partial moon spirit. So she decides to sacrifice herself for the greater good. Aang uses his powers to bring the world back to a safe space. Afterwards, Iroh brings Zuko away from the chaos. Aang decides to let go of the past and prepare himself for the future. Meanwhile, Fire Lord prepares for his next mission while Azula takes charge of their army.